Hello, friends of Terraform on SAP BTP. Within this video, I would like to present a new feature of Terramate. If you have seen some blog posts from me, you might have seen that I'm quite a fan of Terramate. And there is one new feature that I think is super useful for you using Terraform on SAP BTP. Now, this new feature, as shown here in this blog post, is called Terramate Catalyst. It's in beta at the moment, but I think it's already worth taking a closer look at that one. Now, the idea behind Terramate Catalyst is to make infrastructure as code available via self-service for developers without having to know the nitty-gritty details of Terraform in general and of the different providers that are used for Terraform, and, as we all know, all the governance and policy stuff that is usually baked into infrastructure as code. Now, with Terramate Catalyst, there are also some new artifacts that come with that, and let's take a short look at what is in there. So for those of you who know Terramate, Terramate is a tooling that allows you, first of all, to orchestrate Terraform configurations, but also gives you a lot of options concerning code generation of Terraform or OpenTofu. Here within the catalyst or the sample that I'm presenting, you have some basic setups that come with Terramate, like a generic Terramate configuration that tells Terramate what experimental features to switch on, what code templates to look up, so where are they located, and then we have some project-specific configuration, like in our case, sub-account region, what stages do we want to offer, like development, staging, prod, what Terraform provider and which version do we want to use when we generate the code. Same is true for this imports folder, where we have code that generates Terraform configuration, in this case a provider.tf file. Now, this is taken from the examples that are provided by the folks from Terramate. And now let's take a look at the core, what we want to talk about, and that's Terramate Catalyst. And Catalyst comes with two new artifacts. One are bundles and the other one are components. Bundles are from my perspective, of the abstraction layer that stands between you as a developer and the hardcore Terraform code that gets executed and provisions your infrastructure, in my case on SAP Business Technology Platform. Bundles come with some configurations that you can do. One, of course, is the bundles.tm.hcl, which gives you the metadata about bundles. In my case, I want to do a basic sub-account setup. I have some description, and then I define a alias, and I give some information about the scaffolding. So how should the generated code be scaffolded with respect to where should it be located? Like here in this case, I have stacks. Then I have something like a bundle input. We will see in a second what this is, and then where to store it. Now, we also have the inputs, and that's kind of the interesting part from my perspective when it comes to this abstraction layer or this enabling of developers. Here we define the input that developers get presented and have to fill out in order to create their infrastructure as code. And those points that are required, or those input fields that are required, they should be kind of abstracted away from the nitty-gritty details of, let's say, setting up a sub-account. And here you should also abstract away, from my perspective, all the governance aspects that shouldn't be bothered by the developer. So in my case, I have a project name, I have a department where the project is located, I have a cost center, a project responsible, I have the stage, and that's quite cool. Here I take basically the information that I have configured in my global configuration and then put that out as a selection, as select options, now not multi-select, just single select. I have a region, and again, I can bring in here some abstract names, and I don't have to know how the region is exactly called and what regions should be available to me within my organization. And then I have, and this is also cool to see later, an input field which is Boolean, which will then automatically be displayed as yes or no. So this is kind of the input that the user has to provide when he does the scaffolding. And then this input is connected to a, let's say, bundle instance, and this is connected to a component. Now, here again, we have some metadata about the stack, like a name and description. Okay, nothing special there. And then we have a connection to a so-called component, which is the second artifact that comes into play, which we specify comparable to a module via the source attribute. And here we map all the inputs that come from our bundle, from the interaction with the Terramate CLI. And we hand that over to the component. So let's take a look at what the component looks like. The component is kind of one layer below the bundle and already contains the infrastructure details from my perspective that the developer shouldn't take care about. So what we have here is a component metadata file, which contains the metadata of the component. Not too much to see here. And then we have, for example, here, the Terraform code that leverages several input files of the component and is, regular Terraform code. Of course, you can also use all the Terramate artifacts in order to generate that. So, for example, I have here the output where I say, okay, only if the createcf is set to true, then this part should be created. Same for the Cloud Foundry environment that should be created. Now, as we have seen, there is a mapping between the bundle input and the component input, and the component input is also defined in an inputs file where we define, as we did for the bundle, the input parts, which can be the same or can be different. So here I have mostly the same stuff. Just for labels, I say, hey, this can already be predefined and brought together when handed over to the component, so that I don't have to care about cost center and so on and so forth. Now let's see how that looks and feels like when it comes to the execution in the command line. So what we have to do is a Terramate scaffold, which triggers this new catalyst feature. So what we can see here is I have to select a collection, which is in my local repository. I have just one bundle configured, so it would auto-detect the bundles based on the metadata. And this is the basic subaccount setup. Now here you can see there is some path given, and I have also here two times the version, so I'm not sure how to best structure that stuff yet. And with that, I immediately land at the input part of my bundle. So I have to name the project the subaccount is assigned to. So let's say cap clean core project. Then I give a department name. So let's say that's done for the finance department. I have to give a cost center. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Email responsible. That's me, of course. And then we have this multi-select option based on the global configuration. So I have here those options that I can choose from. So I will take development. Then we have here this other option where I can choose either US, Europe, or Asia. So I don't have to have any insights on the details of the regions that are available for SAP BTP. So I take Europe. And that's cool from my perspective, is I have defined this Boolean variable for is the Cloud Foundry environment required. Default is no. I say, yeah, I want this Cloud Foundry environment. And then I can confirm the setup and trigger the creation of the bundle. And what happens now is it does not create the Terraform code. What it does is it creates me my stack setup and creates me a bundle, which is a YAML file. Now, who of us doesn't like YAML? But I think that's kind of common sense to use that one. And as you can see, you see that metadata, you see that specification on the source, you see what input values have been given. You could, in theory, also change them here, which currently you have to do if you want to change something, though there is not yet an option to regenerate stuff. But that's coming according to what I was told. So if you want to change something without regenerating everything, you can do it here. But then you really have to know, for example, what are the technical names of the stage. Makes no sense to me if this is the abstraction layer. Now, what we want to have is infrastructure. So how do we continue from there? So what we do now is we do a Terramate generate to generate the code. And here we go. We have the cap clean core project, which is in this stack setup. And we have all the components there. For those of you who have been using Terramate, you have, of course, the stack artifact, the stack file that identifies the Terramate stack, which can be used then for orchestration. Then we have the provider TF file, the backend TF file. I use a local backend. And then we have all the files, make it a bit larger, that we wanted to create. So let's take a look at them. So we have this main TF file where we have some local stuff. And then we have all the labels handed over. That looks good from my perspective. Beta is enabled because we are on dev. All the other stuff is also there. And as we have told within our configuration that we want to have a Cloud Foundry environment, that's also getting created. And of course, we also have then the output, which is the CF API URL, where we use the provider defined function of the Terraform provider to extract that. Good. That sounds like we can get started with Terramate doing the orchestration. So what we do now is Terramate run Terraform init. So it will now initialize our stack. We just have one stack, so not too much to orchestrate here. Let's see if everything is valid. Looks good. Then let's apply. And there is something missing here. So let's export my environment variables and apply things. And as we can see now is we have all the stuff here. We want to create stuff. And now let's switch to the Account Explorer and let's see if things are getting set up. And yes, here we have the Cap Clean Core project, which is currently under creation. Let's make it a bit larger. And here we have the labels that we have given in. That's cool. So everything is now running. Sub account is creating. And the next thing would be to create the Cloud Foundry environment. Yep, that's also getting created. And now we have chosen Europe, so it's EU10 according to our global setup. So the CF API URL also represents this URL, which is cool and which is what we expected to do and expected to have. So let's also cross-check in the cockpit. We have here the Clean Core project, and here we have the Cloud Foundry environment. Cool. So with that, I hope you have seen that the Terramate catalyst that is presented here in this blog post is a functionality that is quite promising and should help you a lot to abstract your infrastructure as code from the developers that don't want to bother about this stuff, but want to use tools that they're used to, like a CLI, which they can do. And then you can move things forward here and enable them in their mission to create applications on SAP BTP. With that, happy terraforming. See you next time.